look at Exodus 33. What we've got here is some dire circumstances. We've got troubled times. We've got massive obstacles, like we've always had in human history, like we have that people in the show are acknowledging that if we could just get rid of all of these problems, we'd be okay. Well, Moses has massive problems. The nation of Israel has massive problems here in Exodus 33. They've spent 400 years in Egyptian captivity. They are just polluted with Egyptian values and ideas and ethics and morals. And God has brought His people out of the promised land. He's brought them through the Red Sea, and they're only there a few days in the wilderness on the way to the promised land. And you know what they do? They rebel. They have a pagan orgy. Aaron makes them a golden calf, and they rebel against God. Moses comes down the mountain. He sees what's happening. He smashes the tablets with the 10 Commandments on it, grinds it to powder, makes them drink it, and asks God to relent in His wrath. God agrees to do that. And then he goes back on the mountain to meet with God. But right before that happens, listen to this interchange between God and Moses. Moses really has a massive transformation in his life here. Listen to Moses in Exodus 33:12. Moses said to the Lord, "See, you say to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. Yet you have said, I know you by name, and you have also found favor in my sight. Now therefore, if I have found favor in your sight, if you really know me personally, if you really know my name, well, here's what I need. If I found favor in your sight, please, now, show me your ways." Is that great? That, why? That I may know you, that I may have the knowledge I need. So I can have faith and hope and confidence and accomplish what you've created me for and commanded me to do. What will it take for me to be able to do that? I need to be shown your ways. I need to have the knowledge that Phil Donahue says we don't have. Moses realizes that without it, he's hopeless. Show me your ways. Why? That I may know you. I love that. Why? In order to have a nice utopian society? No, in order to find favor in your sight. Anything but anthropocentric. Radically theocentric. And it keeps going. Consider too that this nation is your people. You got me into this. And he said, listen to how kind God is. He says, my presence will go with you. Now that's the question, isn't it? Because Moses has seen this people, and they have given no evidence of any worthiness for God's presence to go with them. If anything, they have been a stiff-necked, rebellious, doubting people who've been so enculturated by Egyptian values that they can't be obedient to God. They are displaying nothing of worthiness for God's presence to continue with them. So that's his big dilemma. How could this be that God's presence will continue with them? And God says, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. And Moses says this, if your presence will not go with me, do not bring us up from here. For how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people? Is it not in your going with us, so that we're distinct? Your divine abiding presence is the only thing that makes us different than anybody else on this planet. And if we don't have that, call this whole thing off. Is it not in your going with us that we are distinct, I and your people, from every other people on the face of the earth? That's what he needs. If your presence will not go up with us, do not bring us up from here. And the Lord said to Moses, this very thing that you have spoken I will do for you, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name. And then here it is, guys. Listen, Moses said, please, show me your glory. Oh, that is such a precious verse. That is the question of life. That is our greatest need. That is the knowledge we need. That is the knowledge God gives us. That defines our lives, defines Him, defines everything else. We will spend plenty of time, probably next time, talking about what the glory of God really is. Real quick, it is the display of God's nature and presence in an undeniable, overwhelming, overflowing way. When you behold the glory of God, you don't say, interesting. You get on your face and you're changed forever. In some ways, I believe you can define a Christian as someone who has beheld the glory of God in the face of Christ. When you understand what it means to behold the glory of God, you realize it's anything but something you say, that was cool, after. But even the church in America, that's what we want people to say when they come to church. Cool, that was interesting, that was fun. Instead of the reactions we see in the Bible over and over again, when someone really sees God, when someone really beholds the glory of God, and Moses doesn't ask this. Well, so, come on, let me see your glory. You know he's saying, okay, what I need to be able to be faithful here with this stiff-necked, rebellious people. I mean, he just saw them having a pagan orgy. They have displayed no worthiness, faithfulness, nothing. He needs to know that this God who made a covenant is actually able to keep it when the people are providing nothing from their end of the bargain. And so he goes to God and he asks the question of life. Show me your glory. Now, there's an assumption in that question, isn't there? There are several assumptions. What are the assumptions of that question? God's glorious. Good. He knows enough about God to know that's the right question. What else is an assumption in that question?
He can be revealed.
Yes, He can reveal Himself. He's done it in the past. Think about what Moses saw. Staffs turning to snakes. 10 plagues that the best movie makers in the world just can't ever capture. The Red Sea parting and collapsing on the Pharaoh's army. He has seen God on Mount Sinai giving the law to him. He's seen God. He's beheld the glory of God. But he has seen enough of it to know that's what he needs more than anything else. It's not like, okay, I've seen enough. Even though he's seen all that, he says, I need more. I need more of a sense of who you are if I'm going to keep going. And so Moses asks the question of life. There's an assumption that God's glorious. There's an assumption that He's able to reveal His glory. Other assumptions here?
Moses can understand.
Yeah, that he actually has the ability to understand the glory of God enough. For what? Why does he need the glory of God here?
Assurance.
Yeah, so he can know God, so he can have assurance to continue to lead this people. That's what he needs. He needs this, and he believes he's capable of knowing this glory so that it gives him very daily, real, practical assurance, confidence. The stormy blasts of life blast us every day. It's not just Moses who needs this glimpse of God's glory. It's us every day of our lives. This should be our greatest desire, pursuit, joy, confidence, delight, pleasure, source of worship, source of fruitfulness in ministry, everything, you name it. This is life. This is everything for us. This question is as right as it could possibly be. But you know what's great to know? Moses didn't start out this way. Did he? It took a process for him to get to this place of desperation. Oh God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter in the he knows God well enough to get here, but it took a long time for him to get here, didn't it? Let's keep our finger in 33 and go back to 3. watch how Moses starts off. It's anything but, show me your glory. If your presence doesn't go with us, don't send us up from here. All that matters is you and your abiding presence with us. That's the only thing that makes me or your people any different than anybody else on the face of the earth, including Pharaoh and his armies, or the Canaanites we're going to confront in 40 years. They're no different than we are, except for your glory displayed to us and your covenant made with us in the midst of that glory. So look how he starts. Remember, he says, go, Moses, tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And what does Moses say? Do you remember? What's his response? Look, verse 10, come, I will send you to Pharaoh. Exodus 3:10. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses says, not show me your glory, not if you don't go with us. He says what? Who am I? Oh. What kind of focus is that? You got that right. Moses is heavily anthropocentric here. Even worse than that, he's mosocentric. It's not even just a human perspective, it's self-centered. That's what he needs. He's mosocentric. And he's stuck in a mosocentric worldview. Watch what happens. He says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? And God says, come on, Moses, you're the man. Who are you? Let me tell you who you are. Let me boost your self-esteem. Here, take this gifts assessment survey, and I will show you how gifted you are for this. That's not what he says. He says, Moses, here, take this personality inventory, and you'll see you're a JEDP, which is a perfect personality for this ministry. Here, I'll sign you up for a class on ministry skills. That's what you really need, ministry skills. A class in management, a class in financial issues, a class in counseling. I'll say nothing wrong with any of these things I've just mentioned, people, right? Don't say I think these things are bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to put it all in perspective. And that's what God's trying to do here. He doesn't say, Moses, you're the man. He doesn't say what I've heard lots of sermons on. Oh, you're perfectly suited for this. Think about where you grew up. You grew up in Egypt's court. You know the culture. And again, I'm not minimizing that God used that stuff. But that's not where God goes, is it? You're the perfect guy for this job, Moses. No, he does not go in a mosocentric direction. So the next time a friend of yours says, I'm battling my eating disorder because I just don't think I'm attractive enough physically, don't say to her, oh, yes, you are. Look how skinny you are. You're so pretty. Because that's not really the issue, is it? That's not the issue. You know, when you have a friend saying, I'm struggling with pornography again, the solution is not a new filter. It isn't, is it? It's a total reorientation of who God is and who we are before Him. And so God will not go there with Moses. Do you know how wonderful it is that so often in the Bible, God, and in the ministry of Jesus, you see this all the time. Do you know how wonderful it is that He refuses to answer our questions so often? And rather than answer them, entirely changes the question. Moses says, who am I? And God does not say, Moses, you got skills. What does He say? He says, I will be with you. Is that cool? The very thing Moses asks for in 33 is the agenda God's trying to set for him in 3. That's why 33 is so amazing, because this continues, doesn't it? God goes into this amazing display of who He is through giving His names, and He signs Moses up for a character of God course. He does. He doesn't give him a practical ministry skills course. He doesn't give him personality inventories. He gets the focus right off of himself and onto God Himself. It's this radical reorientation away from an anthropocentric, mosocentric worldview to a theocentric worldview. And this is the radical conversion we have to go through. All of us. And I take great comfort that Moses, the man of God, required a difficult process to get there. Indeed, it was difficult. Look at chapter 4, verse 1. Then Moses answered, but behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, the Lord did not appear to you. And God keeps going. Verse 10. But Moses said to the Lord, oh my Lord, I'm not eloquent. As if that's what it's about. Either in the past or since you've spoken to your servant, I didn't suddenly become articulate. But I'm slow of speech and tongue. I actually don't have these skills I think you need for this job. Then the Lord said to him, who's made man's mouth? You think I just arrived on the scene? You don't think I've been working all along to this moment, to get to this moment exactly the way I want it to be? Who made man's mouth? Who made that ineloquence of yours? Who made him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, Yahweh, affirming this covenant name and this great I amness of him? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak. But he said, oh my Lord, please send someone else. No doubt the anger of the Lord burned against him right after that. But God works on him. Flip over to chapter 6. Watch, it keeps going. But the Lord said to Moses, 6:1, see what I will do to Pharaoh. He keeps telling him that I'm going to do this. Trust me, I can do this. It's all going to work out. Look at chapter 6, verse 12. He keeps saying, I am Yahweh, I am Yahweh, I am Yahweh, over and over again. And watch what Moses says, 6:12. But Moses said to the Lord, behold, the people of Israel have not listened to me. How then shall Pharaoh listen to me? For I'm of uncircumcised lips, incomplete lips, ones that aren't fully formed in what you want them to be, what you need them to be. He says it again. Look in 29. Then the Lord said to Moses, I am Yahweh. Tell Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, that what I say to you. But Moses said to the Lord, behold, I'm of uncircumcised lips. How will Pharaoh listen to me? Do you see how radically Mosocentric he is? It is so disturbing. That's why when we get to 33, you hear Moses say, if your presence will not go with us, do not bring us up from here. He's got it. He's got it, right? Finally, it took 10 plagues, the Red Sea, Mount Sinai, but he's got it. And then when he says, please show me your glory, victory, there's this sense of, okay, something radical has just happened in Moses' perspective. He's done a 180 away from a Mosocentric, human-centered view of the world. And now he's got a God-centeredness. It never's over. He smashes that rock. He can't even enter the promised land. So he still has a battle right to his death. The process isn't over till we get to glory, but there's a wonderful process that God brings us into, and the key to that process is realizing that it's always about being less and less about myself and ourselves and more about God. Now that doesn't mean you end up having nothing to do with all of it, does it? Moses is vital to what God's doing. That's really, I stopped a couple years ago using the expression, it's not about you. Because I think that's an overstatement that is ultimately unhelpful. Because at some point, we're part of what's going on, aren't we? At some point we say, but we're made in God's image. We're His holy people set apart for what He's doing. We will have ministries that He actually gives us leadership over. And God threatens to kill when they question His authority. It actually is about Moses, but it's only about Moses when it's ultimately, fundamentally, centrally about God. That's when you actually start to have significance. The crazy thing is when you give up clinging to you being central, that's when you actually start to gain significance and importance in God's kingdom's advance. So I love it when the apostles I hate it, but I love where Jesus takes it. Remember the apostles? Jesus talks about His impending death. And then you know what they do right after that? They argue about what? Who's going to be the greatest? Don't you love what Jesus says? He doesn't say, what a stupid thing to talk about. You know what He says? A paraphrase. Oh, that's what you're arguing about. Good for you. Because I want you to be great. Now just let me define it. To be great means to make God so all in all that you're willing to give up your life. Those are the great ones in my kingdom. Pursue kingdom of Christ greatness. He doesn't say, don't want to be significant, don't want to be great. Actually, he fuels a Christian ambition that's God-centered. And he talks about the least and the greatest in his kingdom. Unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, it won't bear fruit. Point is, you want to bear fruit, don't you? I want you to bear fruit more than you do. He says, the greatest in my kingdom. In other words, he has an idea of greatness. And he wants that for you, more than you do. But how do you get there? Who are the greatest in his kingdom? Who are they? Who are those people? The servants of all, right? The ones who follow in his footsteps. The one who submit to the will of God, make him so all in all that they actually become great in his kingdom. And so the way we make it about us in a way of significance is to make it all about God. He is all in all. And so I love this verse 33:18. I just love that. If Moses' mother had any idea about this verse when he was a baby, of course she didn't because he had to grow up and write it eventually and experience it, but she would have carved it on his little crib that she put him to float in, you know, his life verse. Any of you have life verses that your parents gave you when you were born? Yeah, it's this wonderful transition in his life. And guys, that's what I want us to think about. This idea that it really is about seeing the glory of God. That needs to be the greatest desire of our hearts. That's the source of our lives. And we'll make sure we understand what that means well, because we don't understand the glory of God very well. But we need to behold who God is in a way that he becomes our life. He becomes everything to us. So you can see how amazingly contrasting this is from the Phil Donahue worldview. Be humble enough to admit you don't have the knowledge. No. Be humble enough to know how desperately you need that knowledge. And know that God loves to give it to you and created you for that. To behold his glory and glorify him in response to it. That's what we live for. Okay, questions or comments? Anything?
That's kind of good too, of like that Bill Donahue response, like it probably like, wow.
Right. Good.
That's where the knowledge starts.
Good. So you behold the glory of God. It induces godly fear in you, holy fear in you. But the amazing, we talked about hunger for God, didn't we? Gene brought it up, right? This wild conception of hunger for God is a hunger that can have a kind of satisfaction in knowing him, but that always ends up deepening the hunger. You never say, well, that's good for now. Or, no, when you're satisfied in God, you say more. And it's the same way with the fear of the Lord. It's this wild thing that when you really fear God, you only fear him when you catch a glimpse of his glory. And the way to deepen your fear of the Lord is not to try to become more fearful of the Lord, but to seek to behold his glory more, because fear of the Lord follows God like a shadow. He walks by, fear follows. And so the way to seek fear is to seek the glory of God. And that's true of everything in our lives. You don't seek conviction of sin by focusing on all your sin. You do it by focusing on God, and invariably what will you say? Woe is me. So there's this paradigm in the Bible that you behold the glory of God, and then everything else falls into place. I feel like so often we're going after all of the implications of knowing God, while the source of all the implications are God himself, and he gets neglected constantly. And so I hope as you look at this, you're so encouraged by taking this course, because this course is about beholding the glory of God. And just think about the implications that can and should and will have in your life. And so many of the things we're chasing after, whether it's fear of the Lord or the comfort of the Lord or the confidence or the boldness or the grace or the peace or the joy or the contentment, whatever it is, that's always the byproduct of knowing God. of beholding His glory. And yet we go after the byproducts all the time, or we seek to solve the problems with Band-Aids instead of the solution, which is beholding the glory of God. Moses knew exactly what he was saying there. So that, for us, needs to become the greatest desire, cry of our hearts, the greatest question we ask every day. Lord, will you show me your glory today? And we never do that arrogantly or presumptuously, but confidently, knowing God created us for this. That's what He made us for. So we do have the knowledge, and He delights to give it to us and created us for it. Okay, any other thoughts? Yeah. Sally.
I just really loved how God affirmed not a condemning Father.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, isn't it, that's so important. It's fascinating that as God is giving His name to Moses and unpacking that and revealing that and providing this naming of Himself, this revealing of Himself, all wrapped up in that is this knowledge of Moses God has. And it's so vital that Moses not just knows God, but knows God knows him. That's what gives him the freedom and the confidence to do that. I know, I'm seeking for you to know me by name, Moses, and I want you to know as you do that, I know you by name. I created you. I have the hairs of your head numbered. I started this whole thing when I created everything, including you in your mother's womb. So that is a beautiful observation, Sally. Good. Other thoughts?
Is this kind of a room for thought, negativity, or?
Yes. If you had me for Theology 1, which you didn't, Leah, you would know I agree with that. When we talk about the humanity of Christ and the doctrine of humanity in Theology 1, one of the main drums I have a bumper sticker in my office that students made for me that says one of my favorite expressions, embrace your finitude, which means acknowledge you're limited, which requires a process. And when we talk about the humanity of Christ, one of the main verses is, and Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and favor with God and man. Jesus Christ had a process. And I think we so undervalue that, and then so undervalue the process in our lives that isn't the result of sin necessarily very often. It's the result of being created and finite and therefore necessarily in process. I think we will be in process in many ways for all of eternity. We have this idea that when we get to heaven, the whole discovery is over. And now we're omniscient. You'll never be omni anything in heaven. God alone is omni everything. We're never omni anything, and so we'll always be finite. We'll have these sin blinders taken off, and so our knowledge of God will skyrocket, but none of us is going to have complete, exhaustive knowledge of God. And we need to realize that now, too, with that sin blinder. And so yes, there's a process here that we need to acknowledge and learn to love. One of the things I try to combat in my Theology 1 class, and we better do this in here too, is a sense of guilt for the process, rather than saying, this was what I was created for. And the discovery is so part of the delight, isn't it? I don't know about you, but some of the greatest worship times I've ever had in my life is when I discover something about God, often something I already knew, but now we're understanding at a new level. And there's an exhilaration in that discovery that I don't say, oh, I should have known that. Right? What's wrong with you? This shouldn't be new to you. No, here, I read a book this summer that's so helpful, guys. It's called Humility by Andrew Murray. And here's the point. He says, we far too often seek to encourage humility by thinking about our sin, when the greatest example of humility we have is what? Christ. His humility was not because of his sin, was it? It was a result of what? Seeing God the Father for who he was, himself as the Son for who he was, and submitting to the will of the Father so that God will be all in all. And that's not out of sin, that's out of a recognition of who God is. And there's a process involved in that, an increasing recognition and submission to that in our lives. That's not a movement from sin to maturity necessarily, but a movement from one state of understanding to a greater state of understanding. How about Jesus learned obedience from what he suffered? Jesus did. Not moving from sin to obedience, but from a a capacity to obey to a greater capacity to obey. That's not sinful. He didn't feel guilty about that. That was a victory. That was a joy. So yes, absolutely. And if I looked at some of your daytimers, it would indicate that you think you can and should be doing way more than you ever could. You're not omniscient. You're not omnipresent. And so yeah, there's this sense of guilt for being in process. When God created you to be in process, and you will be for all of eternity. And so embrace your finitude, love the process of your life, and take joy in that. Now there's grief when there's sin involved in that process that needs to be repented of, for sure. But that's all part of God's plan as well. Great point, Leah. Absolutely. Anything else?
It's just cool to see Moses' desire to know God repeated in the psalm that he writes.
Yes, Psalm 90 that we started off with.
Yeah, he says, "May your deeds be shown to your servants, your splendor to their children. May the favor of the Lord our God rest upon us." It's cool to see that.
Isn't that great? Thank you for pointing that out. That is beautiful. So he doesn't just want this for himself. He wants it for God's people. He realizes that this is our food, this is our life, our sustenance. Yeah.
I was just looking at
That's really what Aaron was talking about. There's this fear of the Lord. See, a true fear of the Lord is so overwhelming that the last thing you'd ever think of doing is running away from Him. Right? Because true fear makes you realize, oh, that's not even an option. You don't run away from something that really is fully in control, do you? If you're running from God, it's not because you think He's so powerful. It's because you don't realize how powerful He really is. And so yeah, there's this wonderful aspect of the fear of the Lord that actually draws you to Him, not away from Him. And Piper's done some great preaching on this idea, and he talks about why do we love roller coasters? I know all of you don't, but if you do, you know what I'm talking about. You get off the roller coaster and you say, whoa, let's go back on, right? I just felt so small and out of control, and it was so scary, and there was something so thrilling about it. And he talks about this instinct we have where we love to be safely afraid. And he talks about being in a cabin with a fire burning, with a hurricane outside. And you want to open the door and just sort of experience it, right? And stick your head out there and whoa, and go back and where you're safely afraid. But you're drawn to the power of it. As long as you're safe. And Moses knew he was safe in the midst of this all-consuming fire that is God. That's right. So he knows no one can see God and live. But can I see you? There's this being drawn to Him. He's the one who said that. But can I see you? Because I trust you too. And I know you're calling me to this and drawing me to you in this way. And so there's this wonderful, worshipful fear of the Lord that draws us to Him, never away from Him. People say, oh, I don't want anything to do with God. He's too scary. No, you don't realize half of it. So if you really knew how scary God was, you'd run right to Him. You got this short sail on this scariness thing. You have no idea what you're talking about. Good. And so often we try to say, oh, no, He isn't. He's not scary. No, He's terrifying. Right? So yeah. And so we try to make God less terrifying and fear-inducing so people will be drawn to Him. When God does just the opposite, and godly leaders do just the opposite. They lay it out there knowing that if you really catch a glimpse of His glory, you're not running away. You're getting on your face. You would never imagine that running away could ever accomplish anything. Okay.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.